Ayiti, l'hôpital. Ayiti, l'hôpital. Si vous besoin connaître vrai problème pays, joindre cause yo, toucher conséquences yo, ak joindre solution yo, depuis le fait midi pour 2 heures chaque jour, branchez ZoomHaitiNews ak site internet GTI-HD, qui c'est groupe de travail interdisciplinaire sur Haïti et sa diaspora. Pour qu'écouter Ayiti, l'hôpital. Ayiti, l'hôpital. Chaque jour qui joue avec Zami ou Dr Yves Saint-Siné, dit Saint-Cyr, professeur d'université, chercheur, consultant indépendant, sociologue, théologien, pasteur. Haïti, l'hôpital. Dans ZoomHaitiNews ak GTI HD, nous mettons moun avant toute bagaille.
Dites la dit en pile, le cas duré longtemps, mais des jours en jour n'a fait penser. Moment difficile a fait dans
Bonjour, c'est avec un peu de plaisir, nous, entre la CAO dans ZoomHaitiNews, pour capable porter pour vous, ti interview ça, nous avons fait, et jeudi, ensemble avec, yon habitué, et dans Kaela, donc, député Andy Levin, Depite Levin, lui-même qui, et pas jamais raté, ont occasion pour parler ensemble avec nous, pas jamais rechigné, quel que soit les, ou contacter, il est toujours là ensemble avec nous, donc c'est yon, et grand supporter et Haïti, et c'est pas jeudi et pas hier, puisqu'elle fait visite en Haïti depuis les années 80, et elle écrit tout sur Haïti. D'ailleurs, on a travaillé sur un document pour nous traduire, pour capable mettre disponible en créole pour moun qui est intéressé. Depite Levin, bonjour, bienvenue sur Zoom Haïti, nous comptons gagnons.
Merci en pile.
Dis-nous, et comment famille hier?
Oh, tout le monde en forme, tout le monde vacciné, même PTO, et tout le monde en forme, merci. Et vous-même?
Bon, tout le monde très bien. Et pour Haïti, nous ne pouvons pas dire tout le monde très bien, puisqu'on déjà connaît et comment la situation est même liée à Haïti. C'est sous ça qu'on a tout commencé, puisque et donc 7 juillet est passé à genyen des individus, ils ont dit c'est mercenaires qui entraient la caille président république là dans résidence privée li yo et assassiné jodi là, donc qui mettait Haïti dans une situation encore et plus difficile. Dis-nous, nous ouais, et Caucus là t'es déjà sorti on note et celui que nous t'es déjà et travail sur lui mettre sur site nous qui gens et ou même ou apprendre les nouvelles ça dans niveau Caucus là et Depite Levin.
Quittez répondre une question en anglais. I was deeply saddened by the assassination of de facto President Jovenel Moïse and the injuring of his wife. I'm glad that she seems to be recovering, so I'm grateful for that. There are many questions around this. Obviously, how all these people, who was paying them, who organized this, why there wasn't, obviously the president has a security detail. There seemed to be no resistance. None of them were injured. And how this all happened. But, you know, my focus is always on the Haitian people, and Haitian civil society. And so as we face this moment, the first time in 106 years that a Haitian president has been assassinated, my focus is on how we can return power to the people. How can the United States, can the OAS, can the UN listen to the Haitian people, listen to the unions, listen to the small businesses, listen to the Catholic Church, listen to the Protestant Church, listen to the Voodoo community, listen to the human rights groups, listen to the bar associations, and realize that this was not a constitutional government. If the president wasn't constitutional, certainly his interim prime minister wasn't constitutional, not to mention that he was already replaced by another person who never started, but he's not constitutional. And the you know, the 10 senators who are left are not free to form a government of their choosing either. So I think
An nou, e Depite
Yeah.
Levin, sorry mwen interrompu,
Oui.
I'm very sorry, an ap vin sou sa pise se trez important, men nou wè, administrasyon Biden nan, anonse y ap appuye enquête kap fet la. They said they are going to support the investigation to know who killed the president. Te
Oui.
gen yon mission k tale, te gen NSC, DOJ, te gen
Oui.
Pentagon, te gen Homeland Security k tale. Eske yo brief nou nan niveau Caucus lan? Did they brief you to say what's going on? Did they give you a report about that?
So we have had 2 briefings so far for the whole Congress, and actually we will have another briefing today for the Haiti and Caribbean caucuses. You know, I founded a Haiti caucus with 3 co-chairs, Val Demings of Florida, Yvette Clarke of New York, and Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts. And so we will have another briefing. But I think really there's 2 things going on, right? It's important to be clear. There was a brief visit by officials from the National Security Council, the State Department, and so forth about really more the political situation. And they did not meet with civil society groups, unfortunately, but they met with the 3 pretenders to power, I would call them, you know, the interim prime minister and Mr. Henry and the president of the Senate. But then there are also FBI and other career professional security people in there to assist with an investigation. That is ongoing. And we don't have any results of that yet. And I don't see that there being results very quickly. I have no idea whether this doctor from Florida really had anything to do with this. I don't think anybody should think we have credible information yet about how this really happened.
Est-ce que c'est vrai nous-mêmes dans le Congrès nous pas ouvrons une investigation sur ça? Nous avons information que nous parler à Madame Ni directement pour nous souhaiter le condoléances, lui parler avec nous et dans le niveau Congrès, il y a nous qui te reach out to her to talk to her, the First Lady?
We will not. I have not, and I do not expect to reach out to her because I'm not, I don't think Congress needs to be involved in the investigation of a crime. We have the FBI, we have the DEA, we have other agencies who, in a non-political way, in a professional way, can help do an investigation. And I support an international investigation, whoever can help find out what happened. And the big questions are who organized it, who paid for it, how did it come down, what was their goal, and how it seems just with no information and drawing no conclusions, it seems there must have been some level of collusion for there to be no resistance whatsoever from the presidential guards, or else unbelievable incompetence.
C'est ça parce que yo entré facile, mais ça nous rend nous compte, et Premier ministre l'a annoncé que le président li mouri à 1h du matin, gen l'autre information qui vient de George Warren, il dit c'est pas jusqu'avant 2h, mon yo dit que tout le président ou peut vini, gen pile information qui pas claire, mais gen tout yo dit c'est 28 moun qui était là, gen 2 Américains là-dedans, yo gen moun qui dit un coup d'état ou bien un assassinat un président dans la région Caraïbe là pas ta fait sans et États-Unis pas involve là-dedans. Naturellement, pas invité à venir commenter ça ou même personnellement, mais comment comprendre la présence des Américains là-dedans?
I just have nothing to say about it, Emmanuel, because I don't know. I really don't know anything about it. They say there were 2 or 3 Americans, all Haitian Americans who were involved. I don't, there have been a lot of press reports that people in Colombia were saying, you know, like a woman said, wow, my husband went off to this and he had no idea what he was getting himself into, or he thought he was going to be protecting people. We, you know, when you have this many people in custody, right? If you do a good job and keep them apart from each other, right? And question each one separately about what time did this happen? What time did that happen? You know, if you don't want to get in trouble, let me see your phone. You know, what information do you have? You can piece together a timeline of what actually happened. It takes time to do that. And I think, so I don't really have a lot of useful things to say about the investigation, except that it needs to happen. It needs to be rigorous, professional, impartial, and let us all see the facts.
Mais jusqu'à présent, Depite Levin, qui ça nous est, genyen des opposants à régime nan, que la justice y a déjà invité, te gen Steven Benoit, ancien sénateur talé, y a eu la tortue, mais moun qui t'a bay président sécurité yo, jusqu'à présent, pas gen disposition qui prend pour yo mette yo, ba di gel yo, parce que nous pas connaît si yo involve, mais pas gen disposition qui prend pour tendre yo dans la justice, qui j'en comprenne ça?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't really have a lot to say about the investigation. If the head of the presidential guard or whoever it was in charge of the security at the private residence or whatever, if they were involved in this, if they were paid off, if they were part of it, they should face justice. There's just no question about it. But you know, I just tell you what, I feel like my role as a member of Congress in the United States is to try to help develop a policy of my country that sees Haiti, that sees the Haitian people, not just a tiny elite, not just people who speak French, not just people who are very wealthy, but really a policy that sees the Haitian people and that respects the Haitian people, and that at long last wants to have a Haitian-led transition to democracy. So that is really my focus.
Sous transition, Depite Levin, nous c'est ça Caucus l'an t'a demandé, c'est ça en pile membre dans congrès et 70 congressmen who signed a letter to Secretary Blinken pour y demander un gouvernement transition. Maintenant que malheureusement le président Jovenel mourit, mais nous il semblait que c'est sous même route continuité avec même gouvernement sac là, puisque représentant des Nations Unies Madame Hélène Lalim lui dit il a continué ensemble avec le processus électoral là, et c'est premier ministre qui était déjà by démission pas là encore, c'est lui-même qui t'a supposé et fini avec transition jusqu'à aller dans l'élection. Au processus là, il pas bon depuis à l'avant. Est-ce que nous passons route pour ta commettre même erreur, do the same mistake the UN, the OAS and United States has done when President Jovenel was alive?
My fervent hope is that this very sad and unfortunate occurrence will allow the Biden administration to join us in seeking a new path. So the idea that what we still need is new elections as soon as possible, that that is not a workable plan. Why? Number one, the Conseil Electoral Provisoire is not legitimate. It was not formed in a constitutional way. It does not have the confidence of the Haitian people. It is unlikely to register all Haitians to vote. The security situation is such that no one can imagine free campaigning without restriction, without fear. You cannot imagine, under current circumstances, all Haitians going out to vote without fear. You know, Emmanuel, I was there in 1987 in the first attempt at a presidential election. in Carrefour at a polling place, we came under gunfire. They shot at the people lining up to vote. And the only reason that people weren't killed is that it was a school with like a wall around it, so the people were behind the wall. I was standing up on the platform where the voting was actually taking place on the porch, so you could see over the wall. Thankfully, no one was killed. And that year there was the massacre at L'École Saint-Argentin, right? We've seen, what happens if you try to hold an election under conditions where there is no security. That's not a real election. And so I'm going to work with the Biden administration to say, let's not just focus on institutions or finding somebody to be in charge, however illegitimate, but instead work with the broad expanse of Haitian civil society, and have a caretaker government that can oversee a return to actual security, safety, and establish an electoral council that people believe in is legitimate, register. And you know what? If it takes 6 months, fine. If it takes 12 months, if it takes 18 months, the point is it has to be real. Do it right.
Excusez-moi, Depite Levin, moi interrompu, qu'on nous pas grand pile temps, donc je vais aller au-delà des temps. Maintenant, est-ce que président ou parler avec l'administration Biden après ça pour nous poser problème ça sous transition, qui ça dit nous, ou après la mort président Jovenel, did you talk to the state secretary or the Biden administration overall to raise your concern about what's going on in Haiti, about the transition? Ça do. Est-ce qu'on parle avec eux, you're d'accord, et pour taguer une transition dans style ou so décrit là?
We are having discussions. I have not spoken with Secretary Blinken, but I am speaking with, various people in the administration. They have nominated an assistant secretary for the Western Hemisphere. He has not been approved yet, and so he's not there. And they're still staffing up. But I think, so I guess what I can say is that I'm going to continue to support the Biden administration. Here we are talking, right? I'm not pulling my punches, right? I'm speaking the truth as I see it. But I have to tell you, Emmanuel, I have not given up hope at all that the Biden administration can turn away from the Trump administration's policies towards Haiti and turn away from the idea that we're just going to support institutions, even if they're not legitimate and don't have the support of the people, and turn towards the difficult work of building up democracy. One of the favorite expressions of people in the United States about our own democracy, right, is that, well, democracy is the worst form of government except all the other ones. You ever hear that expression? And why do people say that? Because it's hard, because people disagree and they fuss and fight with each other. And well, can we Americans allow Haitians to go through the same process that we like to tease ourselves about, that it's hard and you have to pull people together and get some agreement? I am very hopeful that this week, this commission will come out with a plan. And I don't know what it's going to be. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I think the United States should say, wow, really, if all these different religious organizations, human rights organizations, business, labor, education, healthcare, political parties, right? If they're all coming together to try to find a way forward, let's support them instead of just saying, hey, some guy who was a provisional prime minister says he's in charge. So we got to have somebody in charge. So I guess it's him.
Est-ce
That's
que
not going to lead to democracy.
maintenant, nous, ouais, les gens qui sont en charge qu'on y a la, the current government, ils ont demandé Biden administration pour y voyer trop parler Haïti. Donc, nous entendons hier, il y a une information comme quoi Pentagone a approuvé environ 500 troupes, 500 militaires qui t'a dû aller à Haïti. Est-ce qu'on est au courant de ça? Est-ce que vous êtes d'accord avec ça? Qui positionne nous dans le niveau Caucus là sur ça?
I will not say that, there are no conditions in which troops should ever go to Haiti, but I am very wary of it, Emmanuel. I am very wary of it. And why? Because, the history of U.S. intervention in Haiti is not one that has led to the development of authentic Haitian institutions and Haitian solutions. The last time a president was assassinated in Haiti was 106 years ago in 1915. The Marines went into Haiti, right? And they stayed for 19 years. And it did not lead to real establishment of democratic governance in Haiti. So I am not someone who's pushing for us to send in troops. I do recognize that during the Moïse era, gang violence has gotten to the point where it's completely out of control. Kidnappings, massacres. Just 12 days ago, there was a big massacre in Bel Air, right? And other neighborhoods. So I do think, and I think that's a legitimate concern that Haiti has to deal with. But I think any talk about U.S. troops needs to be done with great care. And I would emphasize beginning to stand up authentic leadership that has broad support in Haiti rather than, rushing in troops at the behest of a regime that Haitian people do not see as legitimate.
Merci beaucoup, Depite Levin. Moi, j'étais content et gagnant. Nous toujours apprécié ça. Nous connaissons qui j'entends, et précieux, là, au printemps, parler avec nous. Ça fait nous et un pile plaisir. Merci en pile.
Merci en pile, Emmanuel. Kembe Fem.
Bye bye.
Thank you so much.
Ayiti l'hôpital. Ayiti l'hôpital. Si vous besoin connaît vrai problème pays a, joindre cause yo, toucher conséquences yo, ak joindre solution yo, depuis le fait midi pour 2 heures chaque jour, branchez ZoomHaitiNews ak site internet GTI-HD qui c'est groupe de travail interdisciplinaire sur Haïti et sa diaspora. Pour qu'écouter Ayiti l'hôpital. Ayiti l'hôpital. Chaque jour qui joue avec Zami ou Dr. Yves Saint-Siné, dit Saint-Cyr, professeur d'université, chercheur, consultant indépendant, sociologue, théologien, pasteur. Haïti, l'hôpital. Dans ZoomHaitiNews ak GTI-HD, nous mettons moun avant toute bagaille.
Dites la dit en pile, elle a duré longtemps, mais des jours en jour